what it means to be an American. America is freedom, and freedom is special and rare.
We, the people of this great nation.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
We, the people.
We, the people
of this great nation.
of this great nation.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Today is a wonderful Monday. Where I'm at, it's a little bit, the weather's not too good. It's getting a little bit cold, and it's raining, so it's not that good. But aside from that, I'm sure somewhere someone is enjoying nice, tropical, sunny days. So anyways, straight to it. A lot of crazy things have occurred in the last couple weeks. Apparently, we don't know where we stand with Donald Trump's election. We don't know what's gonna happen. I saw earlier today. I was looking at the whole interview. Well, I guess with the electorals in Arizona, Rudy Giuliani making his case. Don't know where that's gonna end up. We're still at a standstill with that. But we got a special guest today. His name is Tyberius. He is a streamer. He's a streamer. He's a centralist. The man knows a lot about what he's talking about. And I thought I'd bring him on the show. Our topic is going to be where the Republican Party goes from here. What's the future of the Republican Party? Tiberius, are you there?
Absolutely, sir. How are you?
Good. I'm glad you're here. A lot of people like my podcast because I like to bring different people with different views so we can all have a common understanding. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a little history of Tiberius. Me and him met through streaming, through Twitch. I would stream, and then me and him ended up somehow on the same debate platform. And he ended up voting for Donald Trump based on the vice president pick, if I'm correct, right, Tiberius?
Oh, there was a lot more than that, but that was pretty much a really big sign to me that the Democratic ticket was going to go to hell in a handbasket.
Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and let's go straight into it, and let's have that conversation. So what do you think the future of the Republican Party is?
Before I get there, I just want to give a quick introduction to myself. I'm Tyberius D. I am a aspiring geopolitical forecaster and Twitch politics streamer. That's how I met your good friend here, the Republican Nation. As long and the short is I politically identify as like a moderate or a centrist. I could have gone either way during that election. I voted for Donald Trump because I thought he was the better choice, although I did have some reservations in that choice. That being said, what I do is I try to put demography and geography, politics and economics, and meld them into this mesh of where the world is, where it was, and where it's going. And today we're going to be definitely trying to talk about that. Many of you have probably seen that what we think of as like Republican and what we kind of think of as Democrat has changed over the last couple of years. Voter blocks look like they're kind of moving. What people used to identify as the status quo has definitely changed. And part of that is due to Donald Trump. But there's a long and a short here, and I'll let a gracious host direct me on where he wants to start this. But the game is changing. What used to be Republican is not going to be what Republican is 10 years from now. Some people are going to find a new home in the Republican Party that they really like, but some people will be largely finding that the Democrats are a better switch for them. So I'll start with that as the intro.
Okay, so who do you foresee the shift of parties? Who do you see more people shifting to? I see the working class going towards the Republican Party, whereas the elites are going more towards the Democratic Party. But they've always been towards the Democratic Party. But I just see the Republican Party turning more into the working class party. I don't know if I'm correct on that, or what's your opinion on that?
I largely agree with that. I'm going to lay a little bit of context here. This is not something that just came out of the woodwork. Political parties and political institutions change because things change with it. Political coalitions basically get built up and torn down depending on what the status quo of the day is and what is needed. Great example. In a lot of ways, the Democratic Party used to be a very conservative party a long time ago. It changed back in the 1880s into the 1930s, which has kind of brought the era that we do now, where the Democrats were supposed to be the party of the working class. That's why unions were behind Democrats for a very long time. And Republicans were largely the party of big business. That's changing, for better or worse. I'm not going to pick sides on that. I'm just going to say that it's there. What we're seeing in the first round of this change is that unions, depending on what exit polls you're looking at, are going somewhere between 45 and 55% in favor of Republicans. Now, whether you like that or not, I'll leave to you, but look at the context here. Back during the FDR administration, these were the people who ran the Democratic Party, and that was the truth all the way up through to the 80s and then probably to 1992. The fact that they're now, quote unquote, a swing vote at this point means that something has fundamentally changed in the way that the Democratic Party operates, but also in the political institutions that we have. I can go into that to a large degree itself, or I can look at the general metric. There's a lot of ways we can rabbit hole this. The long and the short is that it looks like big business, and particularly Wall Street, is leaving the Republican Party writ large and is moving into the Democratic Party, while labor, that being unions, that being special interest groups of that kind of sort, and particularly trades workers, are largely moving into the Republican Party.
Yay for the Republican Party, the party of the people. That's what we're going to end up being. Well, we've always been that party, but unfortunately, everybody always characterizes Republicans as one thing. I've always thought that the Republican Party was for the working class. I just thought people weren't so in tune with the history of the Republican Party to know what the Republican Party really stands for. And I think Trump has actually brought that out. He's actually showed America what the Republican Party really should look like. And it should have looked like this a long time ago. But I could think the last guy that maybe was close to showing people the way the Republican Party works would be Ronald Reagan. I think he's probably the best comparison of our time, I guess, that I can talk about. Aside from that, I don't know any other president that I can really refer to. I think Trump is kind of a version of the Reagan of our time, but I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I wanted to talk to you. I'm going to throw this at you because you were on my stream. You saw the arguments I was having on my stream, right?
I saw a bit of it.
So I saw an article on the Federalist, and I read it, that apparently Joe Biden has some sort of magic wand. And the reason that they're saying this is because he literally won less counties than Hillary Clinton did, and by far less counties than Obama did, but somehow he managed to pull off 80 million votes. And he lost most of the bellwether counties. So I don't know how to explain that. And I think that that's where the whole election fraud thing and everybody that's talking about, I know I threw something at you that was different, but it's something that's on people's mind. You know, the whole election fraud. Is there election fraud? Is there not election fraud? And I think it was something that I needed to bring up because you're pretty solid. You think different. You're not either obsessed with one president or the other. And I think that you're more level-headed. Like me, you obviously know I'm a big Trump supporter. So anything I read, I'm going to take it to heart. And I'm going to be full blown at it. You know, I'm going to be biased. So, and I think you're less biased than I am by a long shot. So what is your views on that? How is that even possible?
Sure. I really appreciate the endorsement there. I hope I can ante up to it. So on a level here, those claims I agree with, and some of them I don't. Let's talk about election fraud in general. On a general level, there's very, very little election fraud that we have seen. Now, I don't really want to get my tinfoil hat on, but there is things in certain states that make me question. But as far as I'm aware, from the legal beagles, that has never been proven. And holy crap if it ever does. I'm not going to touch that fight. That is not my prerogative. It's not something I'm involved with. I am not an expert in legal affairs. So I'll leave it at that. What I can tell you is that I kind of understand a lot of why Trump supporters particularly are really miffed off. A lot of the competitive states that have had to have competent government has largely were able to turn in their votes and have an accurate count within the span of an hour or 2 hours. This was Florida, this was Ohio, this was Iowa, this was Texas. Literally all of these states that tend to run themselves pretty well had their votes counted, processed, and done before 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. But the states that really kind of mattered in this election, which was traditionally the blue wall states, have some really antiquated election laws, and basically it made it to where they were counting days later. Whether that's a good thing or not, I'm definitely on the side of no, just out of the sheer fact that they look really bad. It looks really suspect no matter whether they were being 100% honest or not. So how do you get Joe Biden, a guy who basically campaigned from his basement, as Trump liked to put it, to beat Donald Trump? I have two things for you. Number one is mail-in ballots. Now, whether you think that they were valid or given, creditable, I'm not going to tag that. But what I will say is this. If they count, if they are completely legal and legit, is that it allowed the Democratic base to pull out in a level that has never been before seen. There's a lot of Democratic voters that are very poor. It is a hard time for them to actively go to the polls. As silly as that sounds, these are people that, whether through inaction or through sheer circumstances, usually have a hard time getting out to the polls. But mail-in ballots changed that. It made it very, very easy. You could do it at your own time. You literally could have it mailed to you and mailed back. So it allowed the Democratic base to show up on a level that we've not seen before. So that's part one. Part two, if you agree with what the active voter turnout came out to be, it looks like there was a big referendum on Trump. And me and you have talked about this, that Trump does rub some people the wrong way in how he acts, particularly in how he does his Twitter account or how it seems that he handles certain things. My simple observation, whether it be right or wrong, is I think Trump just made a lot of people angry and they voted him out of office on that. And I will give you certain criteria to show this. We looked at particularly Georgia. In Georgia, I believe he lost by something on the order of like 12,000 votes. But if you look at the spread between what votes he had and the senatorial runs on that, the senatorial seats won more than their Democratic opponents. And that's not the only state this happened in. This also happened in Maine. My firm belief is that while I personally believe that Trump was the better candidate, my fellow Americans in numbers said, we don't like his behavior, we want him out, we're going to put somebody else in, for better or worse.
I see that. I could see that. I can't see that. It's just the irregularities, man. I mean, the dumps, the ballot dumps. I mean, the numbers. I mean, I don't remember a presidential candidate ever winning Florida and Ohio and losing the presidency. I mean, it's just like it's sloppy. There's a lot of things that need to be looked into. Pennsylvania being one of them. Very weird shutdowns, drops of 570,000 ballots at night when they said they weren't even counting ballots, and 3,200 of them went to Donald Trump out of 500,000 ballots. That's even mathematically wrong it's mathematically wrong on the Democratic side, like on their numbers. I mean, I just can't see them surpassing a number like that. Hate can lead people to vote. You're right. Hate can lead people to vote. But at this amount of numbers and these many errors, I mean, just in Georgia, when they did a standard recount with no audits or anything, they found thousands of votes for Trump. Thousands. Now,
what did it come up to? Like 3,700?
Well,
it came up to that.
They lost about 9,000, and Trump ended up gaining something around like 4 or 5. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but that's without an audit. And then you have Pennsylvania that they're missing 47 USB files that have votes in them. They don't know where they're at. They don't know where the documentation is, and they don't know where they're at. I mean, it just feels really weird. The pipeline that apparently broke during the count in Georgia, but it was nowhere near the area where they were doing the counting, and then they could remain counting when Republicans left. The system, Dominion, Systemax, which was originally reported by Lou Dobbs when he was at CNN on the connections of it between Chavez, Venezuela, and it being brought to the United States. I mean, this was CNN. This was when Lou Dobbs worked for CNN. I mean, there's reasonable. I mean, there's enough doubt there. And I'm going to tell you, I've been researching Trump's biggest case that he has, and I think that that's why he separated himself from Sidney Powell. I think the biggest case that he has that he could bring to the Supreme Court is the fact that they changed the rules without passing it through the legislator, which is, I think, his strongest court case for the Supreme Court. The fact that they did this without making it law. You know what I mean? Without actually going through the legislative process in the state. And I think that that's going to be an uphill battle, but a lot of people are being hopeful, and I've tried to bring in people here to kind of like, I have the overconfident Republicans, and then I have the people that are like, listen, we should accept the results or whatever. But it really is something hard for Republicans to accept. I mean, it's hard to believe that a man that hid in the basement, barely campaigned, you barely saw his face. I mean, Hunter Biden's, whether people like it or not, that did spread like wildfire. People were informed of it. And he's just a person that wasn't all there mentally. It's hard to believe that man pulled off 80 million votes. It's just hard to believe that. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back.
Do you feel homeless in today's American political world? Not really into either candidate or party? Well, guess what? You're not alone. Join me and others just like you across this great country for a discussion of politics from a viewpoint that you can't find in today's media. The Middle. I'm your host, Brian Grozier, and I invite you to join in on the discussion by downloading and listening to the Middle American Podcast.
I completely understand. Let me hit a few of these real quick. As far as how it looks, I believe there was a poll that came out this week even showing that even Democrats say that it looks kind of weird. Of course, they're not really piping up about it because their guy won. But outside of that, I think I'm assuming here, because, and you may call me naive for this, is that I'm sure that there's voter fraud on a minor level. There always is. There's always some guy who's a jerk who does something wrong. But usually it's in the order of like tens of votes, not tens of thousands, right? The other hand here is that there is one state that actually has committed voter fraud on any kind of serious level, and unfortunately that is Pennsylvania. So I can't comment on particularly like if they're doing that again or not. What I do know is this: I am not a legal expert. I do not pretend to even be one. I will let the courts decide this, and I'll totally go along with whatever they find natural. And if it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, the supreme law of the land will hold true. I believe very strongly that our justices are equipped to handle this kind of situation. So there's that. As far as like the political balance of power here, okay, Biden was not a very good candidate in a lot of regards. Absolutely agreed. He's the typical Democrat candidate at this point, is that their coalition is so huge that you have to have somebody who doesn't really make anyone mad, and that largely is Joe Biden. Now, that kind of applies to the body politic as well, and so if you have somebody that makes everyone who isn't a staunch supporter mad, I can totally see where that makes Joe Biden look pretty good. The other part is this. If you look at it as a balance of power kind of thing, Trump had COVID. Trump had an economic downturn, whether it was his fault or not. None of this probably really was. The media was completely against him. Hollywood was completely against him. The only thing that Democrats were lacking, any and at all, was the fact that their candidate was pretty lackluster. But in every other regard, mail-in ballots, Hollywood media, all that we just talked about, the Democrats held literally every advantage going into this election. The fact that this is the end result where literally Trump didn't lose it by much, really, really didn't. It was pretty damn close. just to show the Republicans gain seats. If this is the best the Democrats can pretty much put up, they're in a lot of trouble. If you are a Republican and you think that the end is nigh, that Trump has lost, I'm serious. This is about the best the Democrats can do, and their party is literally going to start tearing itself apart as they have to govern, because a big tent party can win an election. But the reason they don't tend to win the next election is that when you are a big tent party and you win an election, you actually have to govern. And when you actually have to govern, you have to make policy that makes people upset. And when you make your own base upset, they tend not to turn out for the next election. So either which way, whether Trump legitimately lost or didn't lose, 2024 is looking really, really good for Republicans.
I agree with that. They picked up so far 12 seats, I think. Last I heard, I think it was 12 seats we picked up, and apparently the blue wave never came. The blue wave only went for one ticket, which was another reason that, I mean, I'm just skeptical, and I mean, you know how it is on Twitch. You know how it is on Twitch. You got these guys gloating, and they're all like, oh, he lost fair and square. Take the L, take the L. And I'm thinking to myself, take the L? You guys spent 4 years not taking the L. I mean, are you kidding me? Because we just want to see this play out. I just want transparency. I just want to see this in court. Because, I mean, these are some heavy allegations that they're making. And, I mean, Sidney Powell came on and she said that she has enough evidence that she can even put the governor in Georgia in prison. I mean, she's got statements showing money being transferred, family members receiving funds. I mean, Texas found this Dominion program, the System Acts program, not suitable for them. They literally chose not to because they saw how many loopholes they had. I mean, it's just really odd. I never even saw a tight race at that point. I mean, me and you were streaming, and you actually go, yep, this is Trump's. I'm going to bed. I mean, and and we wake up and Trump lost. I mean, what the fuck? I was like, what? I mean, it was just, they have to investigate this. For the 70-something million people that voted for Trump, mind you, 9 million more than he had when he ran for president the first time, which is why I find it really hard to believe that Joe Biden still beat him, because he had an overwhelming amount of more people show up for him. And the fact that there's so many allegations, this stuff has to be looked at. It has to be. And I honestly think if it's taken to the Supreme Court, there's a very strong possibility that it could be overturned. I think there's a lot of flaws in this election. I think the mass mailing played a huge role in this. Unsolicited ballots is not the same thing as absentee ballots. And no matter how much people try to justify it, it's very easy to just sign somebody's name if it ends up in your mailbox and you don't like Donald Trump. Very easy for you to just mark Joe Biden and send it by mail and pretend to sign for somebody else. If they're not verifying signatures, you're okay. You're good to go. Which is I mean, they had these issues in the primaries in Nevada. I mean, right now they had to toss out, 100 or 300,000 votes on the lower, which Donald Trump was on the main ticket, because they found fraud. So, I mean, they're fighting their battle. I guess we'll see. May the best man win, I guess. I still have faith in our democracy. I have faith in our country. And I feel like those of you that don't think that our country was designed to handle situations like this. Our founding fathers did predict situations like this would happen. And that's why they created such a perfect system to fix it. And I think it will get fixed. But I want to go back to, because Tiberius is a very level-headed person. So I like him giving you guys a reason so you can understand why maybe the results look weird. My opinion, I still think the election was rigged. Obviously, I'm a Trump supporter, so that makes me a bit on the bias side. Not a bit, a lot. But nevertheless, it's just the irregularities don't match the way that he won. And the cities where it all ended up in, it's just, to me, it seems unbelievable. It just ended up in Atlanta, ended up in Wayne County, ended up in Milwaukee, ended up in Phoenix. It ended up in all the corrupt cities that you can think of in all the important states. So it's just really odd. They couldn't pull it off in Florida because we have it perfectly designed. They couldn't pull it off in Texas. They couldn't pull it off in Ohio. and they managed to pull it off in corrupt cities. So we'll see. I mean, Michigan is another one that's there, but I'm going to go back to the whole subject that we were talking about, the demographics. Yeah, I noticed a lot of people that even the black community and Hispanic community a lot of them are going to the right. They're starting to see that, and I think a lot of it has to do with, at least with Hispanics, I think religion plays a role in it. I think the fact that a lot of Hispanics are very religious, I think a lot of them tend to lean to the right because they want their rights to be, their religious rights to be safe. Would you agree with me on that?
So there's part where I agree with this and part I don't. Just to end the last segment, I will comment on this. Whatever Chief Justice Roberts sides with, whichever ones he goes with, I would probably think that he's the best judge of character when it comes to this if he has to rule on it. So I'll end that with that. As far as where we are,
looking over the exit polls right now, and there's a big problem with the exit polls, being that hardly any of the mail-in ballots counted, or counted towards the exit polls. Those were largely either people who came in and signed on for like whoever did the Fox News exit polls, like they said, hey, look, I want to do that, or from the samplings that they did, which usually is the people who walked to the polls, or not walked to the polls, but actually who went to the polling places. And reminder that 2/3 of those folks went for Trump that day. So the numbers are skewed on any exit poll that you got. From the numbers that I've seen, unions definitely are moving. They, by every metric, whether it's on the high end or the low end on the exit polls, they're definitely moving into the Republican camp. I really was hearing a lot of murmurs out of the black community that they were looking at Trump more favorably than any other candidate before. The exit polls that I'm seeing shows them exactly where they were 4 years ago. However, it looks like at least in Florida, the Republicans did make gains. The Hispanic community, and I hate to treat Hispanic community as any kind of monolith in any way, shape, or form.
It's okay. I'm Hispanic. I give you permission.
Well, no. Even with that, it's like, the Hispanic community is not a monolith in any way. It's made up of Cubans and Haitians and Mexicans and South Americans of all kinds of different types. And if you go by the exit polls for them, they were everywhere. Like the Cubans went, largely 2/3 plus for Trump. Central Americans largely went for Democrats. And then apparently South Americans went about 50-50. And so
I think that has a lot to do with with Venezuela.
I think it has to do a lot with Venezuela, yes. Anyway, I don't like getting into the ethnic data if I don't have to, because it's really like identity politics shit, and that is some stuff that I'm really not a fan of. And sorry for the profanity. I don't know if you do that for the podcast.
It doesn't matter. I have a QAnon guy that comes on all the time. He's comedy relief. Every other word that comes out of his mouth is fuck. So it's okay.
Okay, fair enough. I wanted to come off at least as decently professional, but I slipped up a little bit. Anyway, as far as what I'm looking at, the stage is setting, but it's not finalized by any shape or form. The Republicans that I'm looking at 15 years out from now, and the Democrats I'm looking at 15 years out from now, are in some ways going to be very unrecognizable. You're going to find people in the Republican coalition that you're going to think are stand-up people that you can really get along with, particularly unions. But there's going to be people that are going to roll into that party in the long term that you are going to look at in a really weary-eyed way. I'm going to say it right now, and I'm sure your listeners are going to lose their mind on this one a little bit. The people that call themselves socialists, we're talking about people who want workers running businesses, that want co-ops, not the people that want to, overthrow the government or anything like that. But the people who are of that breed, I firmly believe that they will move into the Republican Party over the next 20 years.
I do too. They have more in common with the Republican Party than they know. They just don't see it. I mean, I sometimes get into debates with people and we find common ground, and they're like, and I'm like, listen, I go, Donald Trump just passed that exact bill. I got into an argument with somebody and they were telling me, oh, we should be buying prescription bills. And I go, Donald Trump just passed that. That's right out of Bernie Sanders' book. I mean, the executive order that he passed where local governments can buy from Canada and they can choose where to buy their prescriptions so it could be lower cost for people. I mean, that's exactly right out of Bernie Sanders' book. It's right out of Bernie Sanders' playbook. I mean, so there is common, and I think a lot of the people that voted for Bernie, they wanted an outsider. See, I noticed that a lot of people, what they want is change. They actually want to see change. Trump provided that, but Trump provided also a bit of division, to say the least. And that was the problem. And he got hit with a lot of different things. It was not a very easy presidency for him. I think he had a really rough presidency. He wasn't accepted by the Republicans for the first 2 years. He went through an entire Russian investigation that was a hoax. And when he had the power to be able to really make a difference, the Republicans were blocking him. So, I mean, I think he would have been much more successful if the Republicans would have been more open to him at the beginning of his presidency, but it took him a little while to get used to the Trump machine. And I feel bad. I've been saying this over and over on my podcast. I mean, everybody who voted for Joe Biden, they basically voted against their own special interests. I mean, honestly, I can't understand how you would vote for somebody that literally, I mean, right now, every progressive should be mad because Biden backstabbed all of you. All of you that voted for Biden thinking he was going to put progressives, he did not. All he did was flip-flop around and put the same Obama administration just in different positions. That's all he did. So, which in a way is good for, I guess, Republicans because we don't have these aggressive progressives in power. I wanted to ask you, what is your look at, because me and you made an electoral map and everything. We predicted it completely wrong. I've never been so wrong on a map in my entire life. But I want to ask.
Rub it in a little bit. I missed 5 states. I'm sure that everyone can figure out what those 5 states were. I really thought that Trump was going to pull the exact same states that he did in 16.
I thought he was going further. I thought he was going to take Nevada. But that being said, what do you think is going to happen in the Georgia runoff?
Georgia runoff looks like, and I could be wrong here because I know the Democrats and the Republicans are dumping literally every resource they can into the runoffs because the Democrats, at minimum, if they can pull both of them, and I think that's a really hard sell, is that if they can, they make the Senate even, which makes Vice President Kamala Harris. If they get that, makes it where they can pass a lot of stuff because the House is still Democrat. That would make the Senate technically Democrat and the executive branch Democrat. Now, for me personally, as an evil, dirty centrist, I don't want that. I fully admit my bias. So, just laying that out there, I want a split government. I like a government that actually has to compromise and where people have to say,
well, we need a balance of power.
No, you can't.
We need a balance of power. I mean,
I agree with that.
You give power to one party, I mean, God knows the things they'll pass. I mean, do you think Biden is going to complete any of the promises he's made?
I have no idea. And all right, so I'm going to admit my bias here as well, is that the biggest reason I could not vote for Biden is that Biden largely struck me as either a little bit schizophrenic, where he's saying he was going to do one thing and then said he was going to do another, particularly when it came to the oil industry. I don't know how many times he went on record that he was for fracking, then he wasn't for fracking. I couldn't look at him and say that it was a very good choice either way. So, problem one. The other side of that was half of Biden's campaign was vote for me so I can undo half the stuff that I've done in my 47 years of public service, which, again, kind of blows my mind a little bit. But there we are.
I mean, the crazy... Okay, go ahead.
I appreciate it. The long and the short here is I couldn't look at Biden in any real positive light. And if you really break it down, where it looks like he's going, he would have been more the better candidate for me on policy. But the way he marketed himself and the way that he may or may not go left it totally up in the air for me, and thus I couldn't vote for the guy. I knew at least what Trump was going to do. Yeah,
we've had him for 4 years, so we kind of have an idea. But yeah, I mean, right now as tensions arise in Iran, obviously because of the new guy that was just killed, the nuclear scientist, the guy that handled, I guess, the main guy for their nuclear tests or of their weapons or whatnot. There's tensions. I mean, I've seen pictures of them burning both Trump's face and Biden's face. So apparently that's the only time we could see somebody have something in common with both candidates.
The Persians are miffed off. This is I can't give you an exact count, but I'm pretty sure this is like at least the fifth nuclear scientist they've lost in the last 20 years, and I'm pretty sure the number is actually higher than that. Back in 2002 to 2004, they lost one every 6 months. And I'm pretty sure, they lost four, and I think there was an attempt on a fifth, but he ended up getting away. So, yeah, tensions are definitely high, and I know the Persians are looking at the United States that we probably had something to do with it. I'm not going to say whether or not we did. I'm personally looking more at Mossad having done this personally, but that's a whole other can of worms I don't know if we want to go down.
Well, I mean, they're blaming Israel as well. They're threatening. They're threatening to bomb Israel, and we know what's going to happen if they bomb Israel. The U.S. is going to retaliate.
The gloves come off, and I don't want to even think about that, but we'll see where that goes.
Well, you know what's going to happen if it's a Biden presidency. You know those war hawks, those old school war hawks, they love that war.
So I don't disagree with that. There's definitely a lot of any of the ones that were in the Republican Party have largely left to join the Democratic Party, so they've definitely got most of the hawks in that party now. But there is one big thing here about the Biden presidency that I don't know if I'm holding out hope for or I'm just kind of being cautious with, is that I think the Biden presidency is largely going to be a domestic presidency. Number one is obviously because of COVID. They're going to focus on that because they have to, especially when they gave Trump so much crap for having this ridiculously quote-unquote high body count in regards to COVID. And then they're going to have to make sure that they don't get a body count higher than that. And there's a very good likelihood that they could. So that's on the table for them. On the other hand, I think literally 80% of Americans strongly are against basically the American empire, as my friends like to call it. Basically, the Americans playing world police. I don't think the average American no longer has any stomach for it. And I don't blame them. I really, really don't. And so if the Biden administration actively engages with something like that, I think it just pretty much makes sure that they would get voted out any kind of Democratic administration that runs in 2024 would serenely get voted down.
All right.
Go ahead.
I was going to tell you the last question. Do you see Donald Trump running in 2024?
Is it possible? Yes.
I don't see him.
Well, I don't know what he's going to do because everything that he has done in the last 2 weeks has kind of surprised me. Don't get me wrong. If he thinks that there is fraud, let him make the claim, let him go after it and fight the legal battle. But he's definitely not handling it well. And I thought, a lot of what he was doing was more of a kind of like a get out the vote tactic. They might rig the vote, so make sure you get out there and you just put all the numbers up that you can. And I actually got to hand it to the left on this one. They kind of called Trump's behavior very, very accurately on this one. And I feel bad because I've got a little bit of buyer's remorse there. Trump, you got to handle this with a little bit more dignity, man.
But we don't know the intel that man knows. He's probably being presented with all this evidence. And again, people don't realize all these little court hearings, because I keep hearing, he's 1 for 36. Yeah, George Bush lost most of his small hearings until it got to the Supreme Court. So I don't think people realize the advantage that we have for it going into the Supreme Court. Considering that even if without Roberts, we have a 5-4 vote. So, I don't know. I see a lot of the electorals meeting, like today, Rudy Giuliani, and I see them all noticing the same thing that Giuliani and everybody's saying. They have a lot of people. Somebody just joined them. I forgot his name. He just joined the team, and he's a cyber, they call him like the genius of cyber fraud. Like they call him literally the genius, and he just joined Sidney Powell's team to help. And he says that there's no doubt in his mind that this was fraud at the highest level. I mean, he said it. He said that there's no doubt in his mind, and he says, I mean, Sidney Powell's making like these threats that people are going to jail. She has copies of receipts of people getting paid for harvesting ballots. She has copies of, I mean, a bunch of his name is Navid Kishwartz Nia. Apparently he worked counterintelligence for the CIA, NSA, and FBI. He spent decades connecting top secret dots. After several months of working with Mr. Courtney, he began connecting those dots too. He did not like where they led. So apparently he connected some dots, and apparently they're adding more to the case of Sidney Powell. I don't know. I mean, the electorals can decide to vote the other way even if it got certified, right?
They can. I don't expect that. What I expect them to do is uphold whatever their state's popular vote was, and if that's the case, Joe Biden will be. If that's going to get flipped, it will be in the Supreme Court, and we'll find out. I'm sure here in the next 2 weeks if that's going to be the case. Actually, yeah, what is it? The electors vote on the 12th, and that will be when it's confirmed?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to find out in short order. This, all these claims, if any of them can make it to the Supreme Court, they will go there, and we'll get a ruling, and it will have to be in short order because otherwise it's just going to be a mess. And I fully expect that will be the case, just like what we saw in 2000. And I have no idea what they're going to find. I'm not an expert in that kind of thing. There's so much information that I don't even have.
I mean,
I'm not going to make that claim.
You really need to look into it. I mean, it's bizarre, man. I mean, to say the least, it's suspicious. To say the least. I mean, I don't know if I could say that it's enough to change an election result. But do I think that they really flipped a lot? I mean, did they milk the shit out of this and come out with a way to cheat this election? I mean, if history is a teller of how president elections go, Joe Biden should not have won this presidential election. I mean, if the past, based on the past vote, huh?
I'm going to fight you on that a little bit. As far as like personal charisma, Donald Trump should have took it away. But if you look at it as a kind of a normative thing, any time that there is a large economic downturn, whether it's deserved or not, the political party that is in power universally has been voted out every single time.
Not the way though. What has me confused is the way it happened. The states that Trump won, the counties that he won, and the counties that Biden won, it just doesn't add up. Like, I mean, there was Rudy Giuliani stepped in front of the Pennsylvania, and they couldn't even certify it. They couldn't certify Pennsylvania because they were like, there's no way. I mean, everybody in the room stayed shocked. 1.8 million or 1.7 million, no, 1.8 million unsolicited ballots went out. 2.5 million came back. How's that possible?
Yeah, I heard that claim, but I heard that claim a lot. I have not been able to verify that.
And then 47 USBs go missing. I mean, there's just something. And if that happened there, then you have to question the other places that use the same exact system and had sudden shutdowns in the middle of the night, like Georgia, for example, or Phoenix, Arizona, where they're finding a lot of discrepancies in Phoenix. I mean, a lady said that she saw people filling out ballots in a room and they shut the door and they told her not to ask questions. And there was Democratic lawyers in polling places, which doesn't make any sense. And then Milwaukee, another city, even though the recount gave Donald Trump less votes, it actually benefited Biden. But again, a recount without an audit and signature verification is as good as nothing. You're counting fake votes regardless. So, I mean, it wouldn't change anything. I mean, I think it's an uphill battle for Donald Trump. That's the reality. I more foresee a Biden presidency. I stay hopeful that if there is fraud at this major scale, like the accusations that are being made, I feel that the justice system will serve us well. I trust in our government. I trust in our Supreme Court justices, and I trust in the system. and nobody's above the law. And I think that they will find a way to uncover whatever it is that the Trump team is claiming. If it's fake and they're not claiming anything and Joe Biden won the election, I will accept the results either way. But at least give them their day in court to prove their case. That's all I want. Transparency. So,
and look, I fully second that. The only problem I will have as an addition on that is that if they were to prove that there was systematic voter fraud in multiple states and multiple democratic institutions, forget the legal proceedings at that point. I mean, holy crap, man. Like, people are going to be out for blood if that were to be proven the case.
Yep. That's what worries me. That's what worries me, because that would give everybody every reason to go out into the streets and really cause havoc. They'll make Antifa look like a bunch of little boys, which is what they are. But I mean, you know what I mean. It'll be bad. It'll be bad for everyone, and I just don't want that. And I know you don't want that. We just want to go on with our lives and keep doing our thing, and have fair elections and have a nice democracy and just live our lives to the fullest and enjoy everything America has to offer. Tiberius, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope to have you again on another subject. It's awesome. Guys, again, I don't know if most of you follow Twitch. I'm trying to convince this man to start doing podcasts, because I think he would do an amazing job, and it's really fun, and you reach a much larger audience than what we're reaching on Twitch, I can tell you that. So you definitely should consider it, because you're really level-headed, and I think you would do a good justice for a lot of Americans out there. I really appreciate it, man. I do a Twitch show. If you guys want to come by, and also have a YouTube account, just type in Tyberius D, Tyberius D. I'm pretty easy to find across the internet. You can find pretty much anything I put up. So I do a talk show that I record onto YouTube, and I get like the little skits that I do and talk about serious issues. You can find that with relative pretty ease. As far as the Twitch, you can just stop by the show and see what I do there. As far as a podcast, I largely leave that for my friends to invite me to, such as this one. I like to specialize in what I do. So there you go. Okay, well, then I guess I'll have to keep working on convincing you then. All right, guys. God bless you. God bless your families. And God bless this beautiful country we call America.
America great again.
Hi, it's Judge Janine. I want to thank you for listening to the Republican Nation podcast. It's an important podcast to listen to because the Republican Nation is all about the Constitution, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, and all of those rights that are important to all of us. We've got to make sure that America doesn't lose any of those rights and that we stay true to our founding fathers' intent. So thanks again for listening to the Republican Nation.